President-elect Trump is weighing in on the unrest in Syria, saying the United States should stay out of it. A rebel insurgence has reached the gates of the capital city of Damascus, forcing the government defenses out of homes.
Meanwhile,
yeah, I think she's totally unqualified to be a DNI, and I think her positions put her beyond the outermost fringe of American politics. When she visited Assad in Syria, he was effectively a Russian-Iranian ally. And what she said about Syria not being a direct threat to the United States, that was her justification for going, it's completely false. The Syrians and their combination with Iran and Hezbollah have posed direct threats to Americans across the region. They certainly pose a direct threat to key American allies, Israel and Jordan. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the files that may be uncovered in the Syrian government, if the rebels succeed in capturing Damascus, what they show about a number of Americans.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got to talk about some geopolitics, okay? Because what's happening in Syria right now is extremely fascinating. It seems to be a full-blown shit show that's about to go down in the Middle East. Lo and behold, we have another regime change that is about to happen, in which I personally believe that in the long run, it's probably going to backfire, right? But we'll see, right? We will see, okay? Because for years, the United States, the West told us that they were backing moderate rebel forces in Syria to take out Assad, right? Now, people like Tulsi Gabbard have been mocked for her position on Syria, in which she basically says, hey, maybe we should be careful about taking out this Assad guy, right? And I'm not saying that Assad is a good person. I'm not saying that he should be supported in any way whatsoever. I'm just saying that maybe we should be careful about trying to cause another regime change in the Middle East, because look how that worked out in Afghanistan and Iraq, in some of these places where we've tried this, and it really didn't work out too well, okay? Because the people that we support and arm to fight these proxy wars against our enemies, they're not necessarily good guys, okay? A lot of these individuals tend to be radical Islamic extremists, which, again, is something that Tulsi Gabbard tried to warn the United States about just a few years ago, and she was mocked for her position. She was called an Assad apologist.
So, Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a friend of yours, also a military veteran, a Republican, he said on Twitter when he heard about your visit, quote, fact-finding mission, fact, 50,000 plus dead children in Syria. Tulsi Gabbard, I hope you didn't meet with their butcher, Assad. Now, Assad has used chemical weapons on his own people. You said it's going to be up to the Syrian people, but there really aren't free and fair elections in Syria.
I'll tell you what I heard from the Syrian people that I met with, Jake, walking down the streets in Aleppo, in Damascus, hearing from them. They expressed happiness and joy at seeing an American walking through their streets, but they expressed a question. They said, why is it that the United States, its allies and other countries are providing support, are providing arms to terrorist groups like al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, Arar al-Sham, ISIS, who are on the ground there raping, kidnapping, torturing, and killing the Syrian people, children, men, women, people of all ages. They asked me, why is the United States and its allies supporting these terrorist groups who are destroying Syria when it was al-Qaeda who attacked the United States on 9/11, not Syria? I didn't have an answer for them.
Obviously, the United States government denies providing any sort of help to the terrorist groups that you're talking about. They say they provide help for the rebel groups. Tell us more about...
The reality is, Jake, the reality is, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because this is an often talked about thing by people like Adam Kinzinger and others saying, well, we've got to support the moderate rebels. Every place that I went, every person that I spoke to, I asked this question to them. And without hesitation, they said, there are no moderate rebels. Who are these moderate rebels that people keep speaking of? Regardless of the name of these groups, the strongest fighting force on the ground in Syria is al-Nusra or al-Qaeda and ISIS. That is a fact. There's a number of different other groups. All of them essentially are fighting alongside, with, or under the command of the strongest group on the ground that's trying to overthrow Assad. The Syrian people recognize, and they know, that if President Assad is overthrown, then al-Qaeda or a group like al-Qaeda that has been killing Christians, killing people simply because of their religion or because they won't support their terror activities, they will take charge of all of Syria. This is the reality that the people of Syria are facing on the ground and why they are pleading with us here in the United States to stop supporting these terrorist groups. Let the Syrian people themselves determine their future, not the United States, not some foreign country.
Yeah. So again, what I find to be extremely fascinating about this is that Tulsi was saying something years ago that people like John Bolton is basically admitting out loud was true, which is that we were, in fact, arming and supporting these so-called moderate rebel groups who actually are not moderates. They're actually Islamic extremists, right? They are Al-Qaeda, okay? And now, lo and behold, Al-Qaeda, right, the offshoot of Al-Qaeda, who says that, hey, no, you don't understand. We're moderates now. We've distanced ourselves from those people. Wink, wink, right? They are about to take over Damascus, okay? Assad is on the run, allegedly. He's missing. He's nowhere to be found. We don't know if the guy has control over the capital. We don't know what's going on, okay? But it looks like Syria is on the verge of basically falling, okay? And, Damascus could be taken over in a few days now by these so-called moderate rebel groups. And President Trump has come out here and rightfully called for the U.S. to stay out of it, okay? We still have troops stationed in Syria. He's saying, stay out of it. Let's not get involved. Let's just let it play out.
President Trump is overseas tonight. He's also making his position known on what he believes the U.S. involvement in Syria should be. What is he saying?
Yeah, it's pretty clear. Look, he's saying this is not the United States fight. The United States should stay out of it. That this is something, just stand back and let them finish up there. The U.S. does have forces inside the very northwest of Syria. They are backing and supporting and backed by a large, mostly Kurdish rebel faction there, the Syrian Democratic Forces. President Trump making very clear he sees no role for the United States forces inside Syria at the moment. He's not talking here, it appears, diplomatically or politically. This is really about forces. And at the moment, they are a long way from the action in the capital, but he's making it very clear they should have absolutely no part going forward in what's happening there.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, I agree. Right, I agree with President Trump. Let's just stay out of it, right? And when I mean stay out of it, I mean no matter what happens, let's just stay out of it, right? Let's just stay out of it, okay? It is refreshing to hear a U.S. president say, hey, let's stay out of the Middle East, right? Let's not get involved in this conflict, right? Doesn't happen too often. Usually when stuff like this happens, the neocons and the neoliberals are chomping at the bit, right? To try to jump in and get involved, right? And to go to war and to make sure our guy wins, right? So we can install our puppet and then eventually have our puppet lose power because it was all fake, right? Everything that we propped up in some, war-torn country in the Middle East, right? That's typically what happens, right? And you see with Afghanistan, right? We ousted the Taliban, who we helped get into power via Operation Cyclone, in which we essentially backed the precursor groups to the Taliban to help them fight the Russians. And eventually the Taliban arose out of the groups that we backed, and they took over Afghanistan. And then we had to go into Afghanistan and topple the Taliban, in which we stayed there for 20 years just to eventually lose control of Afghanistan again to the Taliban. The Taliban have now taken back over Afghanistan after we spent trillions of dollars and lost countless lives of American troops. Yeah. And if you look at what's happening in Syria, there was a covert CIA operation called Timber Sycamore, in which back in 2015, we poured billions and billions of dollars into Syria in order to arm rebel groups, moderate rebel groups, they said, to fight Assad, right? To take down the Assad regime. And the Pentagon came out and admitted that, yeah, those weapons that we flooded Syria with, yeah, they ended up in the hands of groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And lo and behold, those same rebel groups, they have essentially played a key part in taking over Damascus, right? In invading the Syrian capital. And it seems as if they are about to gain power and control of the capital and maybe large parts of the country. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like history repeating itself? Just saying. This is why we should stay away, right? Let's stay away. And I want to react to John Bolton here, who once again is going to admit things that the liberal media said was a conspiracy, which is that these so-called rebels, they're not moderates, right? They're actually extremists.
John Bolton, he was also the national security advisor during Trump's first term. Thanks so much for being here with us. I just want to get your reaction first to this stunning advance by rebel forces in Syria tonight.
Well, it certainly looks like the combination of pressure from the north, but also from the south out of Daraa province, where over 12, 13 years ago, during the Arab Spring, the opposition to Assad really first manifested itself. Look, in 2011, everybody said Assad was done for, and obviously he wasn't. It may well be this time his luck has run out. It certainly looks very grave. The real question, I think, is whether a combination of Russian and Iranian assistance can prop him up. Or whether we're coming face to face with some very significant questions about the future of Syria and indeed Iraq, whether they can maintain their territorial integrity, whether they're viable as states going forward, or just what the lay of the land will look like.
Has this surprised you how quickly they have advanced the rebel forces and successfully?
Well, I think there's a lot we don't know. We don't know, for example, how much Turkey was involved in supplying logistics and intelligence and other aid to these rebels. Let's not forget another complication here are the neo-Ottomanist imperial ambitions of President Erdogan of Turkey. But I think one thing we're seeing is the near collapse of Russian ability to do anything militarily, drawn away from Syria by the war in Ukraine. What Russia's interest in Syria comes down to is its naval station at Tartus and its air base north of Tartus in Latakia province. If the Russians can make a deal with a new Syrian regime and keep those bases, I don't think they care that much about Assad. For Iran, it's very different. If Assad and his Alawite regime are replaced by Sunni Islamicists, Iran is in deep trouble in its ability to support whatever's left of Hezbollah, whatever the Israelis haven't destroyed. And this whole opportunity for the rebels in Syria, we owe to Israel. And we owe to Israel's destruction, ongoing destruction of Hamas in the Gaza Strip and its ongoing dismemberment of Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Middle East is definitely changing to Iran's detriment. But let's also be clear. These Syrian rebels, by and large, are Islamicists themselves. Many are al-Qaeda, ISIS fighters, and a terrorist regime in Damascus is, in lieu of the Assad regime, is like potentially jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. The
Ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 ding. Now these people are admitting the truth, which is that these so-called moderate rebels weren't actually moderate, right? They were ISIS, Al-Qaeda, which again, just think about how much of a shit show this is. Again, this is why this stuff never works, right? It never works because we want to take out somebody that mainly is a threat to Israel, right? Let's keep it 100. Assad is mainly a threat to Israel, okay? And we don't like the fact that he's aligned with Russia and Iran, okay? Who, again, Iran, mainly a threat to Israel, okay? So yeah, this is why we, along with Israel, participated in arming these groups that we claim were moderate, right? But now we know they're not, okay? John Bolton just admitted that on national television, that Tulsi was right. The person that he always smears as an Assad apologist, right? She was right. And lo and behold, now the neocons, the same people who were backing this type of stuff, now they're saying, well, it's kind of not good that you have Islamic extremists that's about to take over Syria, right? It's kind of not good that they're going to be empowering that country. They're going to take control. Okay, and again, this is what happens every single time. And again, I'm not one of these people that thinks that Assad is a good guy, just like I didn't think that Saddam Hussein was a good guy, right? But one thing I can say that, hey, Saddam, he ruled with an iron fist, that he at least had some stability in Iraq, right? He kept that country together for the most part, okay? I mean, he was brutal. He was a bad guy, but he kept it together, okay? It was stable. Something that I can't really say right now about Iraq, okay? And I personally think that you're about to see something similar happen in Syria, where you're going to have, these people take over, and it's essentially going to be a free-for-all, and there's not going to be much stability at all. And we honestly don't know what the outcome is going to be. We have no clue how this is going to turn out and the type of leadership that country is going to have. I hope one day people learn that, in some parts of the world, right, considering their culture and how they live, right, democracy don't work, okay? And, you kind of need a guy that rules with an iron fist in order to keep the country stable, okay? Because the culture, how society has functioned in those countries for thousands of years, necessitates that type of leadership, that type of rulership, whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, that's just what works best, okay, for stability. And I think the most important thing in the Middle East is stability, okay? Not, getting involved with human rights and all that stuff. That's not a problem, right? It's not our problem. A stable Middle East is the best outcome for the world. But, hey, we will see what happens here.
U.S. shouldn't get involved militarily, but it is dead wrong to say we don't have real interest in the outcome of this fight.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about that because, as Nick was reporting, President-elect Trump has been very clear he wants the U.S. to stay out of Syria, writing, quote, "This is not our fight. Let it play out." It's very different from what Senator Lindsey Graham, for example, posted yesterday. He said that it's, quote, "imperative to reinforce American troops there." Who do you think is right?
Well, I think we cannot leave American troops at risk, that's for sure. They're largely concentrated, not in the northwest part where the rebels have come from, but in the northeast, and have been a stabilizing force there and a real deterrent to Iran actively supporting Assad more widely within Syria, and at the absolutely critical At-Tanf enclave at the confluence of the Iraqi, Jordanian, and Syrian borders. We've got to worry about Erdogan trying to extend Turkish control over much of northern Syria. That would not be good for stability in the region. We don't know whether Erdogan has spoken to Trump about this or not, but it's possible Syria will simply fragment, that Assad will retreat to the Alawite highlands north of Lebanon, and that could become a mini-state. The rebels could take Damascus. The Syrian Defense Forces, the Kurdish forces, could be left in charge of northwest Syria. This could contribute to the fragmentation of Iraq right next door. Things are really very unstable, and therefore American forces at Tanf in northeast Syria, in Iraq, needed to be provided with whatever protection is necessary given the breakdown of order, whatever order, minimal order there was in Syria to begin with.
Yeah, they shouldn't have been there in the first place, right? And Trump tried to pull them out, okay? He tried to evacuate all the troops from Syria, but the woke generals stopped him, okay? They said, no, we're not going to follow your orders. So once again, Trump was right, right? We should not have left those troops there, okay? They wouldn't be in this situation had we just pulled out. But hey, they are there, and I'm praying for them, and I'm hoping that they're safe and that they don't get caught up in this conflict that really doesn't have anything to do with us, the United States of America. I'm not talking about Israel. I'm talking about us, the United States of America. Ain't really got that much to do with us, and we'll see what happens. But hey, this is something that the West has been trying to make happen, and it finally happened, and we'll see what the result will be. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.